You're standing in a Costco checkout line on a Tuesday afternoon, and there are two guys ahead of you. Same age, 52, same khaki shorts. One of them just stepped out of a leased BMW X5 with a $1,140 monthly payment, a wrapped Apple Watch in his cart. The other one drove here in a 2016 Ford F-15, with 140,000 miles and a door dent he never bothered to fix. One of these men has $1.2 million in index funds. Quick, which one? If you pick the BMW guy, you just made the same mistake as everyone else in that line, because the F-150 guy is the millionaire and the BMW guy has $9,000 to his name and a payment due Friday. So when people ask how the world treats you differently once you hit $1 million invested, the uncomfortable answer is it mostly doesn't. Because this isn't really a video about how people treat millionaires. It's about why they can't, and about the one person who starts treating you completely differently the moment you cross that line. My name is Nick, and I spend way too much time thinking about money and the strange psychology wrapped around it. If you've ever wondered what actually changes when your portfolio hits 7 figures, the social stuff, the family stuff, the stuff nobody puts in a spreadsheet, make sure you're subscribed and give this video a like, because today we're going through all of it. The studies, the awkward Thanksgiving dinners, and the math. Now, before we get into how people treat you, we need to be crystal clear about what $1 million invested actually means in 2026, because the word millionaire is carrying around about 40 years of outdated branding. Let's start with how rare it is. Fidelity, in its most recent retirement analysis, counts about 595,000 401k millionaires on its platform, out of more than 25 million accounts. That's roughly 2%. Zoom out to the whole country, and $1 million in actual investable assets, not counting your house, puts you in roughly the top 3% of American adults. So statistically, yes, you are rare. You are the financial equivalent of being 6 feet 4 inches. Genuinely uncommon, and also nobody at the grocery store is going to clap for you, because here's the second piece. $1 million isn't what your brain thinks it is. Your mental image of a millionaire was installed sometime around 1990, and $1 million in 1990 is worth about $2.5 million today. Flip that around, and it means today's millionaire has the purchasing power of someone with about $390,000 back then, which was a very comfortable dentist, not a yacht guy, a dentist. And Americans seem to instinctively know this. Charles Schwab runs a survey every year asking people what net worth makes someone wealthy, and the latest answer was $2.3 million. 2.3. $1 million doesn't even clear the bar of what the average person considers rich anymore. It does clear the financially comfortable line, which people put at around $839,000, so congratulations, you've achieved comfort. There's no movie about a guy who achieves comfort, but the wildest stat is what millionaires themselves say. Ameriprise surveyed investors with over $1 million in investable assets and asked them to describe themselves. Only 8% said the word wealthy, 8%. The rest call themselves middle class or upper middle class. Northwestern Mutual found the same pattern. Roughly 2 out of 3 millionaires straight up do not consider themselves wealthy. So before we even talk about how other people treat millionaires, understand that most millionaires won't even treat themselves like millionaires. The guy who finally hits the number he's been chasing for 25 years looks at the account, nods, and then drives his Camry to work the next morning. And by the way, the path to that number explains a lot about who these people are. Charlie Munger famously said the first $100,000 is, his word, a bitch, and he was mathematically right. If you invest $10,000 a year at a 7% return, that first $100,000 takes almost 8 years of grinding, but the last $400,000 of the climb to $1 million, about 6.5 years. The hardest quarter of the journey is the first one. So by the time someone crosses $1 million, their habits have fossilized into something deeply boring. Fidelity's average 401k millionaire is 59 years old and has been contributing at the same employer for 26 years. These are not flashy people. These are people who have packed the same lunch since the Obama administration. And before your brain files them under must have inherited it or must have made huge money, let me rule both of those out because this is honestly the most encouraging data in the entire video. 79% of American millionaires inherited exactly nothing, $0. Only 3% inherited over $1 million. And it wasn't monster salaries either. Only about a third of them ever averaged six figures across their career, and a full third never earned $100,000 in any single year of their lives. The most common millionaire occupations: engineer, accountant, teacher, so it wasn't luck. It wasn't a trust fund, it wasn't a Silicon Valley paycheck. It was time, boring habits, and a refusal to lease the BMW, which means the millionaire in this video isn't some abstract rich guy. Statistically speaking, it's future you if you want it to be, and that Camry detail isn't a joke, by the way. That's data. Here's where this gets genuinely interesting. The reason people don't treat you differently at $1 million is that human beings don't respond to wealth. They respond to signals of wealth. And there's a famous set of experiments that proved exactly how this works. In 2011, two researchers in the Netherlands ran 7 experiments where the only variable was a logo on a shirt. Same person, same shirt, but one version had a little Lacoste or Tommy Hilfiger crocodile situation on the chest and one didn't. The results were almost embarrassing for humanity. The logo version got rated as higher status. People complied with their requests more. They got better job interview evaluations. They even collected nearly twice as much money when asking for charity donations. A tiny embroidered crocodile changed how strangers behaved toward a complete stranger. But here's the detail everyone skips. The logo did not make people rate them as kinder, more trustworthy, or more attractive, only richer. Strangers will let a rich-looking person cut the line. They won't actually like them more. Now think about what this means for you, hypothetical millionaire. Your $1 million lives inside a Vanguard account. It emits no signal. It has no crocodile. The waiter can't see it. Neither can your coworkers or the guy at the dealership, which means every social interaction you have at $1 million invested is identical to the one you had at 50,000. The world keeps treating you exactly like whatever you're projecting. And what most real millionaires project, according to decades of research, is aggressively normal. The guy who wrote The Millionaire Next Door spent his entire career studying actual millionaires, and the follow-up research found that about a third of American millionaires drive a Toyota, a Honda, or a Ford. In the original data, the single most popular vehicle among millionaires was the Ford F-150, not the G-Wagon, the F-150. Only about 24% of millionaires even buy a current model year vehicle. Half of them have lived in the same house for over 20 years. The people with the most money are sending the fewest signals, while, and this is the punchline of modern America, the people sending the loudest signals are often the ones drowning in payments to maintain them. The BMW in your office parking lot is not evidence of wealth. It's frequently evidence of a $1,100 hole in someone's monthly budget. Actually, real quick, be honest with me in the comments. What does the richest person you personally know drive? I'm willing to bet it's more boring than people would expect, and I want to see how deep this pattern goes. So, strangers can't treat you differently. Fine. But what about the people who know? What happens when you actually tell people? Yeah, this is where the video stops being funny for a minute, because this is the part the data gets dark about. Let's start with the extreme version. Lottery winners, the only group of millionaires whose wealth is involuntarily public. Now, you've probably heard that 70% of lottery winners go bankrupt. I want to flag something because this channel runs on actual math. That stat is fake. The organization it's attributed to formally disavowed it back in 2018 because nobody can find a study behind it. The real research out of Florida found winners of mid-sized jackpots went bankrupt at about the same rate as everyone else. The money mostly just delayed it for the people who were already struggling, but the relationship damage, that part is extremely real. Sandra Hayes, who split a $224 million Powerball in Missouri, described what happened with the people she loved, and I'm quoting her here, as people turning into vampires, trying to suck the life out of me. These were her words about her own family. And you don't need a Powerball for this. Let me show you the normal person version. Meet Dave. Dave is 51, an accountant, and in March his portfolio crosses $1 million for the first time. He's been quietly building it for 23 years, and he is so proud he could burst. So at Thanksgiving, after the second glass of wine, he tells his brother, just his brother. By February, Dave gets the text. Hey, quick question. Any chance you could float me $15,000 until summer? You're good for it, Lowell. By April, his cousin is pitching him on investing in a roofing business, and by the next Thanksgiving, when Dave mentions his car needs repairs, his brother says in front of everyone, "Oh please, you're loaded," and everyone laughs, except it's not a joke, and now every family gathering has a price tag floating over his head. Dave didn't change. One sentence changed how every single person at that table calculates him. And the data says Dave's story is the rule, not the exception. A 2025 survey by J.G. Wentworth found that 75% of people who lent money to friends or family say the relationship is no longer as close. 3 out of 4. Money flowing between people who love each other has a 75% friendly fire rate. And it's not just the asks, there's a documented psychological phenomenon called tall poppy syndrome. Researchers in Australia ran studies on this in the late 80s and found something genuinely uncomfortable. People reported feeling more pleasure watching a high achiever fall back to average than watching an average person fail. We are wired at some level to enjoy watching the successful get trimmed down. Not strangers, peers. The people at your level who watched you pull ahead. Which is why, when you go read what actual self-made millionaires say, anonymously in places like the ESI Money millionaire interviews, the same sentence shows up over and over, almost word for word. Nobody knows. One couple, both military, said they didn't tell a single person until they'd passed 3 million. Another one put it perfectly. No envy, no drama, no unwanted attention. Nobody around me knows what my net worth is. The financial independence community even has a name for this, stealth wealth, and it is essentially the official uniform of everyone who actually has money. So look at the asymmetry here, because it's kind of incredible. Strangers treating you better requires signals you have to fake with logos and leases. People who know you treating you worse just requires the truth. The system is rigged, so the optimal move at $1 million is silence. The biggest financial achievement of your life and the mathematically correct play is to never mention it at the Christmas party. But keep that silence thing in your back pocket, because in a couple of minutes, I'm going to show you the one room where staying quiet actually gets you paid more, and the person paying you will never figure out why. And now you might be thinking, okay, but Nick, what about the people who flaunt it and seem to do great? The watch guys, the Instagram guys, people treat them like royalty. And if that's what you're thinking, I'd just gently point you back at the logo study. Yes, flaunting buys compliance from strangers, better tables, faster service, fake laughs. What it does not buy in any study ever run is being liked, trusted, or wanted around. You're renting deference, and the rent is due in envy from everyone who actually knows you. The quiet millionaire gets neither the perks nor the resentment, and given that one of those two groups attends your funeral, I know which deal I'm taking. Okay, here's the room I promised. The one place where people genuinely do start treating you differently, and it's probably not where you'd guess. It's at work. And the mechanism is sneaky. There's a concept the financial independence crowd loves, borrowed from a 1981 novel, and the polite version is walk-away money. It's the amount of money at which you no longer fear being fired, and $1 million invested is, for most people, comfortably past that line, because here's the math. Using the classic 4% rule, $1 million can generate about $40,000 a year, basically forever. The guy who literally invented the 4% rule updated his own research recently and says the real safe number is more like 4.7%. Call it $47,000 a year. For reference, The median US household earns about $80,000. So your portfolio is now quietly a second household member earning a bit over half a median salary for doing nothing while you sleep. It never asks for feedback, and it doesn't have opinions about the thermostat. And here's what that does to you at work. You stop laughing at jokes that aren't funny. You stop answering Slack messages at 9 p.m. You say, no, that timeline doesn't work in the meeting, flatly, without the apology cushion. You negotiate the raise like someone who can afford to hear no, because, you literally can. And then something weird happens. People read all of that as competence. Your boss doesn't know about the portfolio. All your boss sees is, a person who suddenly carries themselves like they have options. And we instinctively defer to people with options. So you get treated better, you get promoted, you get listened to, and everyone, including you, sort of misattributes why. The money never entered the room, your behavior did. The treatment change is real, but it's secondhand. The $1 million changed you, and people are just responding to the new you. Which brings us to the actual twist of this entire video. The person who treats you most differently at $1 million is you, and not always in cute ways. There's a psychologist at Berkeley who spent years studying what wealth, or even just the feeling of wealth, does to behavior, and his most famous experiment is the rigged Monopoly game. His team took pairs of strangers and flipped a coin. One player got twice the money, twice the salary for passing go, 2 dice instead of 1. The game was openly, obviously rigged, and within 15 minutes, the rich players changed. They got louder. They smacked their pieces around the board. They ate more pretzels from the shared bowl. And afterward, when asked why they won a coin flip game, they talked about their strategy, their skill at rigged Monopoly. In another study, people who were merely primed to feel wealthier, no actual money involved, took twice as much candy from a jar they were told was meant for children. Now, fair warning, some of these findings have had a bumpy ride in replication attempts, so treat the exact numbers gently. But the direction is hard to ignore. Feeling rich measurably shifts how entitled, confident, and self-credited people become within minutes. So if you cross $1 million and start noticing the world respecting you more, make sure you also notice whether you've started reaching deeper into the pretzel bowl. The line between carries himself with quiet confidence and guy who explains his Monopoly strategy is thinner than any of us wants to admit. There's also a quieter cost, and I want to be honest about it because most videos on this topic aren't. $1 million can be lonely. A Harvard team analyzed 21 billion Facebook friendships. This was published in Nature, and found that at the top of the wealth distribution, friendships become almost perfectly sorted by wealth. As you climb, your network quietly reshuffles toward people like you, and the old relationships can strain, not because anyone did anything wrong, but because you're now carrying a secret through every money conversation. Your friend complains about rent, and you nod along doing improv. That military couple I mentioned earlier said it directly. It was lonely for a decade or more. The wealth didn't isolate them. The secrecy did, and the secrecy was the rational choice. That's the trap. So, is it worth it? I mean, obviously, but let me give you the receipts, because the research here got rewritten recently and almost nobody noticed. For years, everyone quoted the famous study saying happiness flatlines after $75,000 a year. Then a researcher at Penn collected 1.7 million real-time happiness samples and found that's basically wrong. Happiness keeps climbing with money well past $500,000, with no plateau for the vast majority of people. He even sat down with Daniel Kahneman, the original $75,000 guy, and they published a joint paper agreeing the plateau only exists for the unhappiest slice of people. But the detail that matters most for this video is from his newer work. People with a few million in assets reported substantially higher life satisfaction than people with merely high incomes. Read that again. It's not the salary, it's the stack. Because what the stack buys isn't stuff, it's the deletion of about 80% of your background anxiety. It's never doing mental math in the grocery line. It's the check engine light becoming an errand instead of a crisis. Nobody can see any of that from the outside, which is exactly why nobody treats you differently and exactly why it doesn't matter. Oh, and real quick, slightly meta moment. A video like this one, researched, scripted, narrated, is itself one of those quiet income streams I keep talking about. I've built multiple successful faceless YouTube channels doing exactly this, and I opened a completely free community where I show you step by step how to start and scale your own. The exact research to script system behind this video, the templates, and how the monetization actually works. If a second income source that nobody in your life can see sounds on brand after the last 15 minutes, the link is in the description. So let's land this thing. How do people treat you once you hit $1 million invested? Strangers. Exactly the same, because they respond to crocodile logos, not brokerage accounts. Friends and family. The same if you're smart enough to stay quiet, and measurably worse if you're not. Your boss. Noticeably better, but only because you started acting like someone with options. And that's the real renovation. You get the calm, the leverage, the deleted 2 a.m. math sessions, along with a small documented risk of becoming a pretzel hoarding monopoly guy if you're not paying attention. And honestly, I think that's the best news in this entire video. Because if the reward for $1 million were applause, you'd be at the mercy of an audience. It's not. The reward is internal, which means nobody can take it, tax it, or borrow it at Thanksgiving. There's no trophy for hitting 7 figures. There's no parade. There's just a Tuesday where the F-150 needs new tires and you buy them without checking anything first. That's it. That's the whole prize. If you enjoyed this one, you'll probably like my video on every financial trap you'll face as your net worth grows. It's right up here. And let me know in the comments, if you hit $1 million tomorrow, who's the first person you'd tell, or would you tell no one? I read everything. Thanks for being here. Peace.